Okay, so good day to you all. You're all very welcome to today's exclusive sneak preview of our upcoming release of nQuery and nTerim 2.0. My name is Eoghan Murphy. I'm a statistician here with Statistical Solutions. In fact, I was part of the team that developed the software. I'm joined today by my colleague, Kevin Connolly. Kevin has kindly offered to field any questions that you may have throughout today's demonstration. So if you do have any questions, then you can type them into the chat box on the right hand side of your screen. Or indeed, if you have any comments or feedback on this demonstration or on the software, if anything you like, anything you don't like, or indeed anything that you would like to see maybe in later releases, then we'd love to hear from you. In fact, when we were developing this latest release, we really focused on what our customers said, what the feedback we got from our previous release, what customers wanted to see. So this is the main driving force behind our latest release. So we really do appreciate your comments and your feedback. So if you do have anything to say, there are any comments on the software or on the demonstration, then please do not hesitate to contact us, or even after the demonstration, if there's something that comes to mind as you're playing around with the software later on in the year or later on, then just do email us. Don't be afraid to email us. As I say, we really do appreciate your comments and your feedback, and this is the main driving force with us here. Okay, so actually just before we begin, if any of you have difficulty seeing the screen, or if the screen is maybe too large or maybe too small, then you can adjust the size of the screen by clicking on the drop-down arrow on the right-hand side of your screen. There should be a GoToMeeting docking pane on the right-hand side where you can adjust the size of your screen. Okay, so let's get started. Today what I'll be doing is I'll be, just as I say, just going through just what we've added to the latest release. We focused here, you see, on the 3 points: the new tables, new features, new plots. I'll then go through actually demonstration of the software, just giving worked examples. And then if you have time at the end for questions or comments that you've sent in the chat box, we'll have time to answer them. But again, as I say, there's quite a large number of people here, so if we don't answer your question or your comment during today's demonstration, then we will get back to you within 24 hours of the demonstration ending. So as I say, please do send in your comments or any feedback you have on the software. Okay, so nQuery and nTerim 2.0, what's new? Well, the three factors that we looked at when we were developing this latest release, we wanted to look at what tables could we add, what features could we add, and what plots could we add, all to make it a better user experience for you, our customers. So the new tables that we came up with, these were again driven by customer feedback, where we've repeated measures here for 2 means and 2 proportions. We've added in a table for MANOVA, added in a table for ANCOVA as well, analysis of covariance. And we've also added in an option for early stopping for futility in group sequential trials. Again, this is all driven by you guys, the users. Now, we also thought about what features could we add to make the software more accessible, make it easier to use, make it faster, quicker to use. So these are a few of the points that we came up with. The software is now fully integrated. What I mean by this is that when you open up nTerim, you can now open up tests that are in nQuery. So both nQuery and nTerim are now fully integrated. We've also added a specify multi-factor tab, improved our input support options, added assistance, added a cost function. Just generally increased the overall functionality of the product. Again, these will be more apparent when I show the demonstration in a minute. What we also looked at here, we looked at some plots. What plots could we add? So we improved upon our power versus sample size plot. We've also added in an additional boundaries graph and a spending function plot for our group sequential trials. So again, I'll just show these in during the demonstration. Okay, so let's go take a look at the software. Okay, so when you open nQuery and nTerim for the first time, this is the window that you will see. Here we've made some changes, some minor changes that we believe will have a significant benefit to you, the users. So we've added here, the first thing you'll see is that we added some quick access buttons here along the top. Now the first two buttons here are for opening up your study design, whether that be a fixed term design or an interim design. As I say, we've now fully integrated nQuery and nTerim together, so you can open either or. We've also added in the quick access button for a plot of power versus sample size. So when you've completed your design, you can just click this button here and this will generate a plot of power versus sample size for you. Now the other two things there we've added here in the quick access buttons are to, what I was saying earlier, improving your support options. Here you have an open manual button and a statistical solutions support button. Now what the open manual button does is that it helps you to quickly access the relevant content in the manual. So what I mean by this is that, for instance, if you're on, we'll say, the ANCOVA table and you want to just look at the manual for the relevant content that's applicable to ANCOVA, just by clicking on this button while you have the ANCOVA table open will take you directly to that chapter in the manual. The other button we have here, the Statistical Solutions Support button, what this does is by clicking on this button, it will use your default browser to take you to our support page. Here you can submit any question you may have, and as I say, you will receive a response within 24 hours. These questions, they could just be technical questions on the software itself, maybe something that just how to perform a certain task with the software, or indeed they just be general sample size or power questions, and we'll be delighted to answer any question that you may have with regard to sample size or power. Here at this page you'll also have some helpful manuals, helpful documents, and also some frequently asked questions section, a facts section. Also, as these along the top here, we've added in some, as I say, some shortcuts. We've added in more shortcuts, more editing features, more assistance, and more plots. Again, these will become more apparent as I demonstrate the worked examples. Okay, so if you wanted to start up a test, you click on New Fixed Term here, and this will open up the study goal and design window. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with either nQuery or nTerim, there are quite a large number of tests. So what this does is that it helps you narrow down your selection very quickly just by essentially answering these 4 questions along the top here. So the first question, again, with this latest release, you can either do a fixed term or interim design. So the first question you'll get asked is, whether you want to do a fixed term or interim design. So for first example, we'll do a fixed term design, select number of goals, we'll select number of groups just to be 2, and tests. So you can see here a list of tests applicable to the selection along the top will appear in the window beneath. So for the first example, we'll just do a repeated measures for 2 means. This is one of the new tests, the new tables that I spoke about earlier. Okay, so when you open this, again, the interface here, it's very similar to as it was before, in that we have the spreadsheet here in front of us, the spreadsheet style interface, which so many customers seem to love. Also on the right hand side here we have the guide cards as before, where you just get the information about the test and about the specific parameter which you're highlighting. So as you move through the parameters, this will update on the right hand side here for you, giving information on your entry options and the range of values which you can enter for this particular parameter. What we've added here is we've added in the specify multiple factor table here at the end. Again, note you can alternate between tabs and on any section. So the specify multi-factor table, what this does is that it's particularly useful for sensitivity analysis. See, what it does is that it helps you to update your table with a range of possible values or a range of scenarios that you would like to see in your test, and it does this very quickly and very easily. So if you were to, let's say, enter values, you can enter them as before, you can enter them just as normal, just entering the parameters in the spreadsheet as you would normally, or you can enter them here in the specify multiple factor table, which I'll do now. Also, in the specify multiple factor table, what you can do, you can not only just enter the values, you can also enter the values as a list or as a range of values. So here for the difference in means, I'm going to enter a range of values from 0.6 to 1, and I want to see how the difference in means changes, or how this impacts on power from 0.6 to 1 in steps of 0.1 or in increments of 0.1. So I enter in 0.1 here next to it. Now I can also enter values as a list, as I've done here for the between level correlation. So I enter it as a list of values separated by a space These can be separated by a space or a comma. So for this example, I want to calculate the power given sample size, so I've entered my sample size values. Now I'm also entering a cost per sample unit, so if I estimate the cost per unit to be 0.9 or 90 cent, then I can just enter this here. By clicking fill table, this then will automatically enter and then take the values that I've entered and put up on the table every possible combination given the values that I've entered. Now what I want to do here, I want to calculate the attainable power with the given sample sizes, and I want to do this for all columns, so I tick the all columns box and simply click run. nQuery and nTerim will calculate power for every column for me. So what we get here, we have an output statement then automatically generated for us at the bottom of the screen here. This output statement then will update as I move between the columns. So as I move between column 1, 2, 3, you'll see the power value here changing, and indeed the other parameters that are relevant to it. Now if I wanted to plot the first 4 columns, plot a power versus sample size for the first 4 columns, I simply highlight the first 4 columns and click plot power versus sample size. Here you'll see nQuery and nTerim plots, quickly gives a plot of power versus sample size for you. Now on this plot, just by clicking on the title and giving the option to edit the plot, so I can just go comparison. I can just update the title on the plot here. I can also add in a legend here, so I can enable a legend. So by clicking on the legend then as well, I can also change the names on the legend. So just very quickly, and you can enter anything you want in here. So you click OK, and it'll update the legend for you. Now what we've also added here on the plot is this slider. Now what this slider does is that it tells you the power and the sample size at each point highlighted on the plot. So as you move your cursor around the plot, you will see the power and sample size, the corresponding power and sample size at that point in the plot given on the bottom right of your plot. Now, a very useful feature in nTerim, and was in the previous version of nTerim, is that you can now click and drag your plots and snap them in to store them. So if I wanted to store this plot and then perhaps maybe wanted to look at maybe different values, different combination of values, I can then go back to my specify multiple factor table and click clear table. This will then clear all values on the table. However, my plot of power versus sample size is still stored here for analysis, for future analysis. Now if I wanted to open up maybe say a new table and want to look at a different design altogether, then I can just click again on the quick access button here at the top to open up a new fixed term design. So for this one, again, just highlight the desired table and select OK. So this again is one of the new tables, is analysis of covariance. This is a fixed term table. So again, as before, I can enter my values here just at the bottom of the screen here in the specify multiple factor table. So I enter a list of groups. Now variance of means, I'm going to leave variance of means blank for the time being. I'll come back to this and you'll see why. So again, I'm going to enter a range of values here from 0.2 to 0.6, again in increments of 0.1. So for this example, I want to calculate the sample size for a given power, so I'm going to leave sample size blank and enter a value for power. So again, as before, if I click fill table, then every single possible combination of the values that I've entered will then be given in the table in the spreadsheet above. It's coming back here, the variance means, which is blank. I wanted to calculate the variance means. So I have two options to do this in nQuery and nTerim. What I can do here is that I can use our compute effect size assistant, which is on a tab at the bottom of the screen, where I can use nTerim to calculate the variance of means, or I can just input a value manually. So just use the assistant here just for an example. I enter in my means and my ratios, click compute, and here nTerim will then calculate the values for you. To transfer these back into the table, click transfer, and these values are popped straight back up into the table. Now I can do this for each column. I can move along and you'll see the effect size assistant at the bottom update depending on the number of groups in the particular column. However, I'm happy with keeping a variance means 1 just for today's demonstration, so I can just right click it and click fill right, and every value will be clicked in. Now I can just highlight a particular column and click run in that, and you'll see that the sample size is calculated for me. I can do this for as many columns, or I can just click as before, click all columns and click run. So again, as before, we have our output statement, which is automatically displayed at the bottom of the screen, which is updated as you move between the 3 columns. And again, as before, we can do our plot of power versus sample size just by highlighting the 3 columns and then clicking plot power versus sample size. And here you see the plot given for you. Again, you have all the usual features. You have the slider and you have the customizable graph just by clicking on the graph or right-clicking on the graph. So you can store this once again just by clicking it and dragging it in here. Now also in nQuery nTerim, what we have, we've also nTerim tests, so group sequential tests for group sequential designs. Again, just by quickly opening this, you can just click on the new nTerim test to open up the study goal and design window. And here the nTerim button is pre-selected for you. So I'll just click on the first test here, the group sequential test of 2 means, and click OK. So once again, the interface is just like the fixed term test, with the added options at the bottom here for our group sequential entries, where you have to edit in our group sequential design parameters. So again, let's give a very quick example here of this. Oh, actually, just a quick note on group sequential trials before I forget, just for those of you who aren't familiar with it, maybe perhaps more familiar with fixed period trials. How these differ from the fixed period trials that you might be used to is that the data from the trial in a group sequential trial is analyzed at 1 or more stages prior to the conclusion of the trial. So as a result of this, the alpha value, which is applied at each analysis or look, must be adjusted to preserve the overall type 1 error of the design. So again, as before, we have the specify multiple factor table, but for this example, I'm just going to enter the values in directly. Now for this example again, I'm going to calculate the sample size for a given power, so entering 90% for power. And what I want to do here is I want to compare 2 different boundary selections. So for the first look, I just want to look at the FC boundary, so I'm only interested in rejecting the null hypothesis. So again, I select this column and select run. And this will calculate the required sample sizes for the given powers, very similar to the fixed period trial. What's different here is that there's a lot of additional output given in group sequential trial design, in that here at the bottom you see the looks data is also given. And this looks data gives you the information relative to the actual group sequential design itself, so it tells you the incremental and the cumulative alpha that you spent at each look, and it also gives you the corresponding boundaries to each of these. And also on the right-hand side of here, the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice the boundaries graph. Now this boundaries graph here gives the continuation region for the trial. So as long as the test statistic stays within the shaded continuation region, then in theory the trial will continue. If the trial then goes above this line, the trial can stop, and then you can reject the null hypothesis. There's overwhelming evidence for you to reject the null hypothesis. Now, what we've also added here in the new release is the option for futility boundaries, so the option to stop the trial for futility. So to do this, we can just click in, add in here in our group sequential design parameter section, futility boundaries, non-binding. And again, we want to calculate the required sample size for our given power. So just click run. And you can see here now that for the same parameter inputs, it requires greater sample size for the given power. Again, here we have our looks information. Again, the output statement, first of all, is generated automatically for you. But also we have our look statement, our looks for our group sequential design. Now the most striking thing here you'll notice is the boundaries graph here in the bottom right, where the futilities boundary here, where the continuation region is cut off a bit as a result of this futility boundary. So when the test statistic goes beneath this boundary, what you're doing in fact is rejecting the alternative hypothesis, and you're essentially accepting the null hypothesis, and you stop the trial. Alright, so we actually have some more other nTerim tests in nTerim. So again, if you'd like to open up a new test, again, you just click on the quick access button here for nTerim test. For this example, I was going to do a survival test, so click on survival and select OK. So again, as before, you can enter your specify multiple factor table here at the bottom, or you can enter your values in directly into the spreadsheet. I'm going to enter into the spreadsheet again here. Just very quickly entering the values here. We'll solve for power given sample size, so I'm entering value for sample size and leaving my power entry blank. What I'd like to do for this demonstration is to show how you can easily compare the different spending functions available in nTerim using this table here. So again, I'm just going to keep for the first column, I'm going to keep the spending function as O'Brien Fleming, second Pocock. We also have the power family and the Huangxi, Connolly of different spending functions. So for these 4 columns, what I want to do again is say I want to calculate the attainable power with the given sample size. I want to do this for all columns. I select all columns and select run. So you can see nQuery nTerim then automatically calculates the power here for you. Again, as before, we have our output statement, and we can alternate through here. As we alternate through the columns, the output statement updates. But again, I suppose the most striking thing you'll see here is that as you move between the columns, you'll notice that the boundaries graph on the bottom right also updates for you, automatically for you, and the corresponding looks table. But what we added here in nTerim is the different additional plotting options. So we've also added in this inverse boundaries graph. So what this graph does is it's essentially an inverse of the boundaries graph that's automatically outputted here for you on the bottom right of the screen. So you can see here that whereas the boundaries graph that is automatically outputted for you shows you the continuation region, here in the inverse boundaries graph it shows you the stopping region. So the blue region here is this stopping region for efficacy. We could also do here, you can also for the 4 columns, if you want to maybe compare the 4 columns directly on the plot, the 4 spending functions rather of the 4 columns directly on the plot, you can plot the spending function plot. So you can see here the different spending functions are given here, they're mapped on top of one another. I think this is more clear when you can see that enable the legend. You can see here in the legend that it gives the 4 different spending functions and their corresponding parameters in the legend. Again, as before as well, you can plot power versus sample size using these 4 columns. So what I'll do here first, I'll again you can store these graphs in here anywhere. So I have my 4 columns, and again just using the quick access button on the top, just by clicking on this, then I can plot power versus sample size here. So again, as before, we can enable our legend. We can also disable the title, and again we have our slider here which shows us values of power and sample size for each. So you can move these plots around as often as you want, so you create essentially a dashboard of plots here for yourself in nQuery or nTerim. So that's all I have to show for you on my demonstration of the latest release of nQuery nTerim 2.0. Again, if any of you have any questions, I see there's some questions coming in, flooding in there from everybody. If you do have any questions or comments or, again, any feedback on what you've seen or what you'd like to see, more to your point from our perspective, then please do send them in. We'd be delighted to hear from you. All I'll say is thank you very much for your attention. I'll be looking at some of the questions. I'll be here for the next few minutes myself. And as I say, if we don't get to answer your question during this demonstration within the next few minutes, or if your question hasn't already been answered, then we will endeavour to get to every question within 24 hours. As I say, due to the large number of people in attendance, it's simply not possible to answer everyone, but we will get an answer to people, and we really do appreciate any comments or feedback that you have. So once again, on behalf of myself and Kevin Connolly, thank you very much for your attention. Okay, so once again, thank you all very much for your questions and your comments that are flooding in there. I'm very conscious of time there. I know we constrained ourselves to just to the 2:30 mark, so again, we've only a few minutes left. Just one question, person came in there, Richard, where in nTerim can you also get a text statement? Sorry, I'll make it very clear when I was showing this earlier. Just in the output statements here, these are essentially text statements which you can be copied and pasted, or again, just selected or copied to the clipboard. So you can store these as you're going through your designs. You can store these statements up. So again, these are text statements here at the end, which I can say you can copy and paste. We also have another person here, Matt. The boundaries graph. Could you describe the continuation regions again? I can, of course. The boundaries graph here. Sorry, I hope you can all see this here on the right-hand side of the screen. Again, in the original boundaries graph here, when I say the original boundaries graph, I mean the version, the boundary which is automatically generated here for you. What this does is that if your test statistic is, at each look, you compare your test statistic to these boundaries, and if the test statistic falls between these two boundaries here, then you continue the trial until it moves above the boundary or beneath the boundary, depending on your hypothesis. And if the test statistic is favorable and it moves above or below the boundary in favor of your hypothesis, then you can, in theory, once again, as I say, you can stop the trial because you have proven that the trial is efficacy. There's overwhelming evidence that your trial is efficacious. However, this isn't usually done in practice, because in most clinical trials you want to prove how great your trial is. So you want to prove how efficacious your trial is. So you'll keep on continuing the trial until the very end, so that even you get more and more beneficial evidence. Then the inverse of this here at the top, we have the shaded and the stopping region. So again, it's the exact same graph essentially. Sorry, Matt. So at the bottom here, the shaded region is the stopping region. So this is the region that you want to move into favorably for your hypothesis. So as I say, the trial will continue here in the white region, the unshaded region. So again, there's no difference between these two graphs. It's just a different way of representing the same data, and this data is taken here from the looks table. Okay, your questions are still flying in here. As I say, we're quite conscious of time. I see my time is up here again and waved at here. So once again, on behalf of Kevin, Connolly and myself, thank you very much for your attention and your time. It was lovely demonstrating for you. Again, I see there's a lot of questions coming in, and I'll be here for the next few minutes, so I'll stay on afterwards as well, just to answer all these questions that you have. And as I say, if we don't get back to you today, or we will get back to you within 24 hours. So if we don't get back to you by the end of today, we'll get back to you first thing tomorrow morning. So once again, thank you very much for your attention and your time. As I say, it was lovely demonstrating for you. I hope to see you back here again sometime.